So,
A broadcast is live.
okay.
Here we go.
When you about get killed by an old lady on your way from home because she stops in the middle of the road for no reason sideways, but you got a show to do, so you're willing to take her out, and here we are. And the wife just gave me the what is this look? What is this?
That's the first of many, Tim.
We already had the King Kong versus Godzilla round. She had to look up something online, and who was right? I was right.
Hold on.
I'm a nuclear
What
bomb.
were you right about?
So how's everybody doing?
Yeah.
I think I'm doing okay.
Dodge that one.
Nice.
Not too bad.
I think
Getting
we've all
ready
had
for
long-
NASCAR.
There we go.
Yeah. Indy
That is
500 this weekend. I mean, the Daytona 500 this weekend.
Yep.
And I want everybody to know that Paulo there, Costa, as you can see, his nickname is just like in wrestling or something. He is the elite. He is the elitist.
Whenever someone calls you an elitist, I just say, "Yeah, I know I'm better than you. You don't have to tell me."
I still forgot my drink.
Well, I should take it as a compliment. Yeah, you recognize my superior knowledge of the arts.
Both of them, yes.
So we have our we've got our norms and cliffs and like the people that make Cheers what it is around here. Gore Vidal, Murder She Wrote, Tim. We got to get Gore Vidal on here and a guy named Earl Grey. I hold these two up in high standing with their
they both do good videos.
Earl Grey has got quite the collection of stuff.
Yeah. And then have you watched Gore's videos, by the way? I mean, I'm totally plugging his channel right now. So
like I said, whenever I mention something on my channel, some obscure comic, Gore goes out and finds it all in the dollar bin somewhere.
Yes.
And Tim will find it for half that.
Last week we were a mix of the original and the next generation of Star Trek. This week we're the Beatles. You know, so.
I was thinking more like Ozzy, Tony, Geezer, and Bill.
Not is that the Ruddles? Is that what you just pulled? Nice.
No, Tim. You know who that is.
Say it again.
Ozzy, Tony, Geezer, and Bill.
Black Sabbath. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ozzy's the only name I know in there.
I was going to ask you to hand over your music card there for a second.
and rightfully so. Yeah. So, Stay Puff. Make sure you're checking out his channels. He's got some great live streams as well. Friar Truck is here. Rob Ripa. I don't know how long Rob Ripa's been popping up on the channel. Over my channel and stuff like that. He's been around, but for a while there, I can't remember if he can plug it if he wants, but the guy's a musician, writes original works, and he used to send them to me in messages so I could watch them, and it seems like I was subscribed to his channel at one point. Fantastic musician.
Seems like you were a teenager back then. It was so long ago.
It feels that way, but you know. And then Sanctuary of Reality here, and I got to do. He tried to say in the comments, and I didn't listen, but I found his channel, and I think he's up to issue 288 of 300 issues of Cerebus.
Wow.
He's doing it, yeah. So I'm working my way through Flight. I'm picking up where I left off, and I'm digging them. Just a little laid back. I'm not going to try to binge them. And there's little things in Flight where they call back the first like 10 issues, 12 issues of Cerebus. I mean, I could just totally imagine people like in the late 80s, early 90s. I think we're in the early 90s of who were like reading this stuff. And if they weren't there, you know, back at the beginning, they were like, what are these two coins? What are they talking about? You know, and then there's probably people who really were there were going, I can't believe he did that. And they're flipping through their back issues like, well, I know I saw those coins. But I'm not getting answers. There's things Dave Sim left there that there's just no answers for in some of the story.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, definitely check out Sanctuary Reality too, man. So I'm going to wind down for a minute because right before we came on, like I said, it was straight to work, straight home, almost died in a wreck, straight to dinner, straight.
Want to see the comics I got this week?
Yeah.
I'll show you some comics I got this week.
I can calm down.
10's going to be like you're going to be bouncing all over the place.
Start out first with Homesick Pilots that Paolo didn't like the art in, he said. I thought it was okay.
Yeah.
The art doesn't blow me away, but it's solid.
Yeah. I think it was that page with the musician.
This one?
Yeah, that one. I mean, that's very low energy for a rock band.
Yeah, that's not one of the stronger pages. You're right. I mean, some of the creepier ghost pages are good.
And what's with all the lilac?
Now I'm being totally just it's just an observation, but it's like Sinkovich light.
No, I wouldn't even say that.
There's no splatter there, though.
That's why I'm saying it's light. Yeah.
It's more like general.
Sienkiewicz. Excuse me.
No, it's not nearly that sophisticated. It's more like
the colors,
I would
the
say
mood.
it's Jamie McKelvey light, maybe.
Okay.
It's more along the lines of him, and like I said, it's solid art, but it's just there's a lot of manga twists in there. There's a lot of cell shading kind of in there. It looks like a lot of other art you see these days. It doesn't really stand out for me, but it's good.
Yeah.
And the story actually took, or I should say it didn't take a turn I was expecting, because this is issue 3. In issue 2, we found the basic story is there's this punk band, Homesick Pilots, 2 guys and a girl. They want to throw this. They decide they want to throw this. It takes place in '94. They want to throw they want to throw this show in this haunted house. And this other punk band, Nuclear Holocaust or something. First, they go up to the haunted house and spooky things happen. Then this second punk band comes up to that, and they're just visiting it. They're not putting on a show yet. They're like, the house kills this second punk band in the nuclear holocaust or something in the first issue. And then the girl in the band, the Homesick Pilots, gets possessed by the ghosts of this house. And she has to go out and retrieve these haunted items. And at the end of last issue, we found out sort of she had to find like 6 or 7 haunted items and retrieve them to the house and bring them back to the house, retrieve them. So I kind of thought that's what the comic was going to be about from then on in, like her retrieving the items.
Right.
But then this issue is like they kind of glossed over that. She's like, I already retrieved 4 of the items, and it really became more of a character study. We got to know more about the scene they're in. We have to learn some of these. It's funny because like these punks, there's these nihilistic punks in 1994 who hate punk and think punk is dead. We get introduced to them.
Well, you listen to King Day, that'll do it.
They're at a punk show, but they're at a punk show because punk music sucks and it's all dead. But anyway, we get some of them. We get we learn more about the one guy in the band who's looking for the girl, but every time he goes back to the house doesn't let him find the girl. And and the third guy in the band is just losing his mind and sitting under a bridge smoking pot because the cops beat him up. And now the same cop who beat him up is looking for the missing people of that other punk band, Nuclear Holocaust, or Nuclear Bastards. There it is. We got it on the back. Nuclear Bastards is the other band. So it turned into this whole thing that I wasn't expecting. It like kept it very kind of, but like meanwhile, these ghosts are still there doing crazy ghost things. And at the end, they did a crazy ghost thing to the second guy who went up to the house looking for the girl. So it really is going in directions that I did not predict. So I'm very much enjoying Homesick Pilots.
It's almost like, you see, this is how my mind works. It's almost like you take Hellblazer, like number 11. It's called Newcastle.
Yeah,
and that itself took the plot from like an old 70s horror movie, I think called, I want to say House on Haunted Hill, and I know that's wrong. I have to look it up now. Right. But it's almost like they took that and they injected the punk thing that you're talking about.
There's a lot about the music scene in this, but Hellblazer is a good comparison. Now that you mention it,
Yeah.
It does remind me a bit of Hellblazer, I would have to say.
But it's like Walking Dead and Day of the Dead. It's like they took the idea and now they expanded and made a whole storyline out of it. I mean, it's sort of it's kind of a compliment. You know what I'm saying? Kind of like, if you like this, check out where it came from, it sounds like.
But I must say, really, this issue, I expected it to be kind of mission-based, but it's much less standard than that. So I enjoyed it surprising me. And speaking of surprising me, I forgot this book hadn't finished up yet. Birthright, issue number 46, which I think is going to. I thought it was going to 48, like a lot of them do, but it's going to 50. But what happened in this one, it's like all of the issues of this. And it's a fantasy magical story about this guy who was he was taken as a child to this alternate dimension, sort of this magical dimension, except that I think they said 1 day in our dimension is 1 month in their dimension. So he's been missing, you know, and the very beginning of the book, like this is issue 46 now, very beginning of the book was the kid disappeared. He was like 10. And so, of course, his parents and his little brother were all looking for him. And then he showed up as an adult with all these magical powers because the other dimension was trying to break into our dimension and conquer our world. So that's what the whole book was leading up to this big war between the magical people. Hold on, let me get rid of that phone for a second.
Somebody's calling them up going, that happened in Magic, the miniseries by Chris Claremont. You know, the X-Men walked out of a room, little girl got pulled into a dimension, spent years there, and then the X-Men turned around, she's back in our dimension.
Or you could say Poltergeist.
No, this one is like the war happened in the early 40s, and it's like the war just ended, I think, last issue or the issue before. So like the last story arc is all kind of them cleaning up after the war and stuff. It's like his parents got trapped in the other dimension. This and so it's like I don't think I had an issue of this in a little while. I'm not sure, but it just kind of I was like, oh, there's still more. It's really most of it is kind of epilogue. So, but it's good. It's a good, you know. I bought 46 issues of it, so I must like it.
Yeah.
Nice.
Now, let's see the last one. Well, I have 3 issue 1s too. Is of course Norse mythology. Neil Gaiman being adapted by Craig Russell, and in this issue we get Jill Thompson and who is this guy? David Rubin. So now, really nice artwork.
I have heard some buzz about that book. I mean, not
it's
like
good.
Yeah,
the Jill Thompson stuff.
It's Craig Russell doing it. It's going to be good.
Yeah,
well, Craig Russell's doing the script and the layouts. But what's weird about it is it's clearly not made for individual issues.
Yeah, you noticed how it ends. How this issue ends, yeah. And there were stories which lasted more than an issue, and there are issues with 3 stories.
Right. And this one has 2 stories, and the first story is about 15 pages, and the second story is about 8 pages, but hasn't finished, so it just kind of stops, and it'll pick up next issue.
Right.
But it's not constructed like the story just like stop. Like it is clearly they have individual, because what they're adapting it from is Neil Gaiman's Norse mythology book. So each story isn't going to be the same length.
Right.
So it's kind of like, I guess they'll all fit fine in a trade, but in this, it's kind of like, I was like, oh, that story just ended. And I'm flipping more pages. It doesn't even give you like a point to pause on or anything. It's just kind of like, boom, ended. Oh, okay. Right in the middle of this one then.
Right. Not the comics adaptation, but the BBC audio adaptation of Gaiman's book, which is done with full voice cast, is fantastic.
Now I met Craig Russell. I met him twice. It was like 2 years in a row at Baltimore Con. I was so glad he was so nice. He really was. Yeah. And I'm sitting there and I'm like getting him and Walt Simonson. One of them's your buddy there. I'm like throwing like Elric stuff at him, and I'm like, these are like the only two guys I could probably ever talk Moorcock with. You know, in my eyes. I mean, like, and not only would I talk to him about it, I would say 2 sentences, and then I just end up listening because, like, they've lived it. You know what I mean? Like, Moorcock, nothing I can add to this. You know. So
yeah, definitely. Then I got 3 first issues up off the.
Nice.
Here's an example of a logo you shouldn't do.
Oh,
I like that logo better than the.
Okay, let me get you a solo.
You should.
That second letter is an L, not an E.
It is. The dot does confuse you.
So it's Galarian. I was like Girian, and it's as it says on and tiny little letters on top. It says White Ash Presents, and these tiniest little letters up there. And White Ash was a mini series I bought just at the end of last year. It came out, and I enjoyed that mini series. So I saw this on the shelf. I didn't even know it was coming out, so I picked it up, and it was pretty good. This is just like one of the White Ash. White Ash is a story of like elves and dwarves and also monsters that have been stuck on our world for thousands of years. They want to get back home. And so they're mostly underground. They don't let us know they're there. And in the White Ash story, the lead character found out he was half dwarf and stuff had to do with that. And the dwarves and the elves have kind of this alliance against the monsters. And this is just the elf character in like 3 stories throughout her long, long lifetime. So it's like, the first story took place 1,000 years ago. The second story, 500 years ago. And it was okay. It wasn't as good as the White Ash main book, but it had some nice art. I like that naked lady cover. It's pretty cool.
We're at a time where we try to be honest with ourselves and make ourselves better people. But when you go from like the books and then to the movies and then back to the books and read about the dwarves, like with Tolkien and a little bit of Shannara or something like that, I got a feeling if I was in that world, I'd be very prejudiced about dwarves. I don't know. I'm just going to own it. I'm not perfect, but dwarf walks up to me, I'm going to be like holding my pockets and, making sure they don't get behind me. They're going to start stinking. I'll be like, cut it.
They're not pretty like the elves. We trust pretty more than we trust.
Even their wives have beards, and that just freaks me
out. Then here's one that actually surprised me, that how much I liked it. Which I think I showed this a couple weeks ago in Comic Shop News. Radiant Black, #1. Not a huge fan of this cover, just because I don't like the way his head cuts off there.
Wait a minute. I've seen that symbol before. That's like Spider-Man meets it's killing Iron Man? No.
So, and the inside, whoops, there's the inside. Once again, the inside art didn't blow me away, but the storytelling was good. It's that same kind of generic, cell-shaded, manga-influenced, computer-colored art that doesn't. There's a nice glowing superhero shot.
Yeah,
Starbrand.
Light sources everywhere.
Light sources everywhere. There you go.
Looks like Starbrand. I figured it out. It's Starbrand when Bert put a mask on him. Yeah.
It's really try hard. It's kind of we're trying to make this as fancy as possible, but it really doesn't always. But there's nothing underneath the fancy. But the comic itself, I really liked. I put it on my pull list. I have to say, I think in the Comic Shop Weekly, it compared it to both Invincible and Power Rangers. And being too old for Power Rangers, that didn't.
Hey,
but it was very much a buddy comic.
I have met people who do nothing but collect Power Ranger action figures, and you'd be amazed how many's been made since the early '90s. It was a series. I mean, we're talking like 15 years ago, and it was some serious stuff. Well, yeah, when I ran into
people love Power Rangers. I think it's Power Rangers in the costume, but the story is, and it's interesting too. it's not Invincible in that the guy is twice Invincible's age, I think. The lead character is 35. He's a writer whose career hasn't gone well. And he's, feeling depressed, and he moves back in with his parents in his old hometown. And the buddy part was one of his old friends who still lives in town is so thrilled that he's back because he's got his friend back, and he's a lot happier with his friend around. And then they're just out drinking one night, and they run across this glowing orb. The one guy touches it and gives him this Power Ranger suit. And, it's them trying to figure stuff out. First, they were trying to figure stuff out about life. And now they're trying to figure out stuff about this Power Ranger suit. So the first issue really grabbed me, I have to say. It was kind of the buddy movie aspect of it that I liked.
Tango and Cash. No,
but good stuff. I mean, I have to say, but once again, that I just kind of have come to accept that what I think of as generic art these days, because it's so common.
Right.
It'd be amazing. I mean, one of the critiques I've said before is that all they got to do is do, I'm change an angle. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Don't be straight on them. Little looking up at them.
Fewer computer effects. You don't need that many computer effects. Just. Yeah. But that's not how things are done these days.
Yeah.
It's just, and then
they rely too much on color to add depth, and that's that's the easy way out.
I have a sketchbook here from like 1990 or 91 by Vess, of all people, and he's got a little thing in there where he was talking about he's aware of color and how much work it can do. I mean, he gets it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I think I may have to agree with Mark Schultz, who claims that color is overrated.
Color can be really well done.
It can be. Yeah, that's true.
You can these days with color taking up so much of the job of inking, you can really overdo it. Right. You used to be able to overdo it in the ink stage. Now you can overdo it in the color stage. That's what it comes down to. But so many people, I mean the people doing it, and probably the editors, like the overdone cover. I don't even know if the fans like the overdone cover. That I have no idea about. But what happens is it's like, if you can think all the way back to the early days of computer coloring in the 90s, when there was so much, when colors were first learning the computer, and there was so much overdone coloring. That's because the editors liked it. Not because the colorists liked it. It's because the editors loved all the effects. And if you did that, you would get hired. Yeah. If you put 27 light sources and 75 highlights in something, the editors all went, "Ooh, that's so cool," and that's who they hired. So the colorists naturally did all that. So I don't even know who's responsible for the overdone coloring in a lot of comics.
See, it's weird. I mean, I talk like I'm ancient, but like I'm the old school guy. I like less is more. It was Joe Kubert's Tarzan, and I'm not going to whip it off the shelf. I could just do this and get it. But when he was retelling the origin of Tarzan, the color red was used to show the climax of a page. You'd have blue sky, a little bit of yellow sky, and then when they dropped the baby gorilla, and Joe Kubert drew it was a line for the vine and two little dots, but you knew this was the baby gorilla falling. That panel was red, and it's a psychological effect. You know what I mean? That you don't even know is happening to you.
Yeah, when you're doing it on purpose, that's good. If you're doing it just to fill in a color for no reason, it's not.
But the color was actually serving the story as a climax color, or power color.
I'm okay with less is more. But I'm also okay with more, too, as long as it's done right. It's just so often not done right.
Less yellow and more comics.
As a matter of fact, this is the last one I got that I just pulled off the shelf. I'd never heard of. Casual Fling. What is it? Sex is never safe. And I just flipped through it and actually liked the art in this one. And this one actually has sort of the color effects aren't overdone in this one. There's some little color effects and things, but hold on, let me get another. But I liked the art in it. The art was more sort of traditional, illustrative, not so much that Disney manga influenced art with the big eyes and things. But
go ahead.
Who is this? Jason Starr, Dalibor Talajiak. Paolo's going to have to get me on that name of that artist there.
Dalibor Talajic.
Ah, okay. Who have both worked, I guess, for Marvel and said, or DC. It said, where are they here? But they did. But this whole it's a 4-issue mini, and it's sort of a psychological thriller. It's about a woman with a husband and 2 kids who has a fling, and then it's what was that Michael Douglas Sharon Stone movie?
Basic Instinct.
Then it gets all Basic Instinct on her. So in the first issue, we find out, at the end of the first issue, we find out the guy she's having a fling with ain't quite normal. So
wait a minute. Oh, great! On live, I can't get it open. Anyway, I got that. Mine comes with an ice pick.
Ah, okay. So I was like, I'm down for 4 issues of this. I'm okay with that. So I like the first issue. It's a 4-issue mini.
Hold that up again. Hold that up again, because I'm so 80s that when I see a silhouette with a woman in it in the color purple, I'm thinking it's the Prince biography. I'm just saying.
Yeah, this cover is. I'm not a fan of this cover, especially the typography up top. But it was actually
a very 80s cover.
Other cover they had.
That looks like an 80s indie, the way I pictured him when I was 12.
It does. Now that you mention it, it really does look like an 80s indie comic.
Yeah.
Just the design on it isn't very good. The way the logos balance on this square, this diamond shape there doesn't work.
That logo bugs me.
It should have been
the
like
logo. It's like, let's take 2 different words and use 2 different fonts. That's very art school typography 101. You don't want to do that.
They should have made I'm thinking Scorpio Rose's logo would have been good. Make it real big, tilt it. You know what I mean? Make it a little bit more dramatic and not just,
Just about anything would be better than that logo. Yeah. But once I opened the book, I liked the art in it. The name caught my eye for Casual Fling.
But we've got a comment here that kind of goes with that. Rob's noticed an aesthetic with multiple forms of entertainment for the last 5 or 6 years. 80s visuals are blended with futurism that they call retro future. It's kind of cool when done right. I didn't know it had a name, but I know it's the name.
I don't want to step on his toes, but retro futurism really is more of a science fiction thing. What he's talking about, there's an aesthetic. The name that most people associate with it is called synthwave. We have a lot of neon graphics, a lot of things that are superimposed over what are considered to be kind of like really early 80s, what's the word I'm looking for? Wireframe computer graphics, palm trees in the background, something that looks like it was like, Tron met Miami Vice.
I was going to go Miami Vice versus meets Buckaroo Banzai, so well played.
The term that most people use for that is called synthwave.
Nice.
Synthwave is kind of gets recommended to you on YouTube if you start listening to those music to
electronic music
to study at home. But then you start to get recommendations for the synthwave videos, which is guys doing 80s music now without vocals.
Well, I'm going to go way back and maybe a little obscure for some people. Maybe not. But what I'm picturing as we're talking about this is the Cars videos, music videos from the Cars. You know what I mean? Like You Might Think and stuff like that, I want to comment on this real quick, and then I'll calm down here. The color... Huh? Go ahead.
The colorized version from the house.
It's like $40, $45. It's kind of expensive, but I don't know if I'm not sure how it came about. It seems like there might have been a crowdfunding going on. I don't know, but I ran across it on Amazon. But yeah, they've colorized From Hell. I'd have to see it before I comment on it. I'm for it.
Eddie Campbell colorized it himself.
There we go.
Too. What little I've seen of it, and I think I actually showed a little of it on this show months ago. I haven't liked.
You haven't liked.
If I remember correctly, nobody did. But it was just the preview pages in Comic Shop Weekly or something. So I haven't seen a lot of it, but what I've seen of it has made me cringe.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to. I mean, I'm definitely going to check it out, and I'll be as honest as that was what I think about. What I think about it when I see it. But I'm wanting to check it out, but I don't want to pay for it. Yeah, I don't want to pay for it. I mean, I'm talking about like I'd like to sample it or see somebody else's before I decide if I want to get it. Is everybody there? It looks like everybody's froze, or is it?
No.
Okay.
We're just lethargic.
Still here. I was cracking up over this on Facebook this week.
Wait a minute. Gore Vidal, Douglas and Close was Fatal Attraction.
Yep, that was the movie I couldn't remember.
I heard you say Sharon Stone and Douglas. I don't know. I've had a long day.
Wasn't it Sharon Stone who Fatal Attraction?
No, Sharon Stone's in Basic Instinct.
Basic
Is
Instinct.
that what I'm thinking of?
It's
I don't know.
in Fatal Attraction, yeah.
Fatal Attraction boiled the bunny?
Yeah, that's Fatal Attraction.
That's the one I meant. Fatal Attraction.
When you said Douglas, I automatically went.
Yeah,
when I heard Douglas, I go Basic
Everybody
Instinct.
hasn't seen it yet.
That's why we're not a movie show. We can't remember the names of them. New Batman coming out. Batman the Dark Knight. And the funniest thing about me, this is the story about Batman going to England.
Yeah.
And he wears a trench coat. He gives up his cape for a bat trench coat. That was just like, Alfred, bring me the London fog coat. I'm going to London.
Now hold that up, man. He's got the grifter. Hold it up, man. He's got the grifter collar where you get those like padded, like a padded collar.
Right.
Yeah, I
that
like
collar that doesn't exist in the real world, but gives you something to draw.
when it comes to trench coats, it's a trope in comic books nobody's ever pointed out. Start with grifter and just move up. It's there.
Yeah.
And what's with the goggles? I mean, he's got goggles in his mask already.
He's got goggles on top of his mask. Even they're not even over his eyes.
He doesn't need them. He's got infrared in his lenses, so he doesn't need goggles.
They're left over from the apocalyptic world in the Justice League movie. He just never took them off. He forgot.
Oh no! You know what it is? I think Catwoman gave them to him as a keepsake. Stay safe in London. Here's some goggles to remember me by.
Should have given him an umbrella.
Oh, if he had a bat umbrella, that would be the best, because that way he could really blend in London.
It's a gift. It's an awkward gift from the Penguin. Yeah.
Having an awkward gift show up 18 years later, like Ra's al Ghul's daughter gave me.
They're using the end of the trench coat like his cape is what they're doing.
Right.
If he had an umbrella with a cape on the back of the umbrella, that would be something. Then it could blow in the wind.
Yeah, people.
I got to kick out of this one. Tom Baker as Batman the Time Lord.
People always talk about Todd McFarlane's capes, but nobody gave Batman a cape like Bernie Wrightson did.
Yeah. I think I read something recently about Bernie Wrightson and Walt Simonson having a contest to see who could give Batman the longest cape back in the 70s. I don't know where I just read that, but I read that somewhere.
Yep, exactly, Scott. You nailed it.
Huh. But yeah, Batman, The Dark Knight, Batman in London.
I don't even know why I don't even know why I'm mentioning this, and I hate to do this, but like today, it took a little bit longer for us to get lunch. So everybody it's a payday, so everybody decided to get Chinese for lunch. And so I had a few minutes there. I didn't want to start something at work, so I went ahead and got on Bleeding Cool to look at the solicitations for DC. And I swear I had some things I wanted to make fun of on the show, but they weren't even memorable. I think I got down. I think I made it through 20 comic books, and then I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. I was
can't focus for that long.
Oh, it numbs your brain. It really does, man.
It does. That's why I barely even pay. It's easier not to pay that close of attention. Kelly Jones, the tallest cowl tips.
Kelly.
I mean, I happen to be a fan of long coats too. That's why I noticed this Batman one right away.
The only guy to me that's really pulled off the trench coat is Frank Miller in Sin City, but but I mean, the Hellblazer trench coat is completely different than something like that.
Also,
and this is some Andy Kubert art too. Was that Scott?
Also in Hardboiled, which is also by Frank Miller.
Yeah.
Nice. Yep. I'm about ready to grab that off the shelf. Yeah. If I was a Batman, my catchphrase would be, "I'll make soup out of you." Norm Brayfogle. Did he pass away?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's within the last couple of years, I think.
Yeah.
Part of the charm to a black and white from hell was the Campbell's art evoked the feel of the old newspaper clipping illustrations that used to describe the criminal events.
Yeah, I can see that now that you mention it.
Yeah, it definitely gave it a period piece feel. And
Right.
I remember when I first picked up one of the, I've got like 4 of the original issues that came out over the decade that it took for it to come over. And I actually, first time I saw it, I actually named a book it reminded me of from way back when. And I wish I'd wrote it down, but I was young and dumb. Didn't know about YouTube. 15 years later, YouTube would have been here if I'd only
So much stuff I could have written down.
Yeah, I never thought about it until just now, but Tommy mentioned that, made me think. I have the artist edition of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and it's really interesting to see that in black and white versus color.
Yeah.
I can't really have a preference one way or the other, but it works both ways. It's interesting to see it, both ways there.
Well, when I think of the artist on there, I always put him with, I say Kevin O'Neill and Pat Mills. So is it Pat Mills or Kevin O'Neill is the artist? They go together in my mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the artist on there, I think I've seen some of his stuff in black and white before, and I actually need the color to help kind of focus on the art, if that makes sense.
I can also see that same thing thought about. You need the color to focus on the art. I can also see that when I look at Jeff Darrow's art in black and white. It looks good that way too, but sometimes when you put it in color, you notice things you didn't see before.
Yeah, I'd definitely love to check it out and look at it. The stuff I saw was like some 2000 AD stuff in black and white. I can see it in my head. Norm Brayfogle's kinetic energy is what Sanctuary Reality liked here. He was doing.
I stopped buying Batman just before the Brayfogle era, so I missed all his stuff.
That's about the time I really started buying it, I think. The only thing I never liked the way that Brayfogle did his shoulders. He always had like these hooks, for lack of a better word, these very sharp angles on the shoulders that just bugged me for some reason. Other than that, it was fun.
I'm sitting here remembering at the time I wanted Kevin Nolan and Norm Brayfogle doing Batman. Yeah, that's who I wanted.
Nolan doing Batman is a good thing.
Yeah, and going back to there, I could be wrong. You know what I'm saying? I'm just going by memory here, but I think this was around the time that when Apro was doing some work for DC, they brought in Sienkiewicz again to start inking his stuff. And then I heard a story where supposedly Apro and Sienkiewicz were talking on the phone for a couple hours, and right before they got off the phone, he was like, "Well, I'll catch you later, Sienkiewicz. Oh, wait, before you go, stop effing with my faces." And that's why Sienkiewicz stopped inking Apro. He had to respect the artist, not the threat, or how it took. He respected Apro, where he called DC up and went, "Y'all brought me in to fix the faces. I can't do it anymore." And then Jim Apro died. That's when the story came out. Jim Apro had died, and people were telling that story because that was like the last comic book news of Apro. Yeah,
I think you got to have giant gonads of steel to tell Bill Sienkiewicz to not do something.
Yeah, I got another channel. Was old enough. Got another channel to plug here. We got to get him on the show. We've talked about it 2 or 3 times over the years. Simply Incredible podcast. He's a Virginia boy, closer to Scott than me. Check out his, of course, he has a podcast. It's right there. And I've seen him pop up like on somebody else's. It's in your Stay Puff 83, I think he's might have popped up on. Yeah. Dave McKenzie will be joining us later.
Yeah.
Good luck at work. What we got here? The dull, washed out color version of David Lloyd's art in V for Vendetta looks great.
Yeah.
That makes an atmosphere. That makes it feel otherworldly,
Right.
Sleepy Reader's here.
And also, like V for Vendetta was originally in black and white, and it was really moody black and white. So they, toned down the cover so it color so it wouldn't interfere with the graphic design moodiness of the drawing. I think.
Speaking of that, another one that looks really good in both black and white and color is Gary Gianni's Hellboy story called Down to the Sea or Into the Sea. I can't remember what it is. It looks fantastic both ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, we got a lot of activity going on YouTube with the live shows.
One more thing I read this week. This is one of my books I got for Christmas that I finally got around to reading for V in Black. I don't think I've ever read V in Black and White. This is the book tour with Andy Watson. Who publishes this one? Top Shelf.
All right.
And I know I bought some of Andy Watson's comics in like the early 2000s, and I think he's been doing children's books since then. So this is it says it's his first adult book in a while. It's got this very old school cartoon drawing in it. His other stuff that I read didn't have drawing like this in it. This is very New York cartoon.
Yeah.
Drawing. What was that?
Oh, go ahead. Every now and then your voice is going out a little bit, and I think you're done speaking. And then I'll get a syllable out, and you're still talking. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but yeah.
This I enjoyed this. It started out kind of slow because started out like a slice of life book, and I'm a big fan of slice of life comics. But it's him on his book tour, and no one's showing up for his signings, and he's by himself. He doesn't have anyone he knows around, so he like checks into a hotel, goes to the bookshop. No one signs up. After about, 30 pages of that and 3 different books, I was like, all right, come on. Let's get something started here. And eventually, slowly, something gets started. And it got real good because he kind of, through no fault of his own, gets caught up in a murder investigation. And it gets what I call low-key wacky. You really can't call it wacky, but in the context of the story, it gets wacky.
I'm just going to say that somebody owes me money. That was my 2009. Just saying.
But like I said, the beginning of it was like out of 10 was like a 4 or 5, and by the end it was an 8 or 9 out of 10. I really enjoyed it by the end.
That's good.
The book and Andy Watson, who I didn't know was a guy because he spells Andy with an I.
Yeah.
So like when I first started reading his stuff, Andy was an I. I assumed he was female, but he's a dude.
Yeah.
Who spells Andy with an I.
Well, something I'll be bringing up here soon, hopefully, because the 5th issue is out. I've showed this before. I actually think Sleepy Reader has ordered some of these, so I'd love to hear what he thought of them. But like I said, we're not getting. This is a guy out of his house that puts this fanzine together throughout a year. You know what I mean? And he's gotten stuff from Stephen Bissett and a few actual interviews. People send in art that are fans of Swamp Thing. I mean, it's a fanzine. But I have issue 3 and 4, and number 5 I have ordered, and he has posted the picture of the 5th one coming out. It's called. It's from a guy named Holland Files. I now have him on Instagram, and I think he's on Twitter. But this is the kind of stuff. This is like cardboard stark paper with staples and cheap printing, and I love it. I love the feeling in my hands. I love the fact that this is somebody who loves Swamp Thing so much. He's not making a lot of money on it, so that just tells me that he's on his 5th year, starting his 6th year, and I just love that. I just freaking love that. I got 2 of them, and he'll throw in some extra.
I think it was. I have to pull this out just because I forgot it.
You get postcards and like a little. He puts in a few extras in there, so you're part of the Holland Files Swamp Thing Club there, man. But these are like $10 a piece, and like I said, he's doing 1 a year, and it's got some great stuff in it.
Yeah.
It was last year. I just put together a mini art book, just with my printer, and I went and got cover stock paper to print on, and I found the paper to print on in the middle, just because I wanted to make something physical.
See, I would love to pick your head so I could do something that simple. I mean, where I live, you just don't have the resources. You know what I mean? They're just not around here.
I made this right in my home printer.
Yes. Yes.
And and I used to make mini comics in the 90s. So that's where I learned to make mini comics but it was funny because I made like 5 copies and I just stuck them on the shelf and forgot they existed. I discovered them 6 months later and went, oh yeah, I remember I made this because I just wanted to make a book.
Awesome.
So I did.
We hit a nerve with V from Vendetta. V from Vendetta in black and white is very good. The story's more sinister and claustrophobic. I saw no idea where I saw it. I don't know if it was YouTube or real life, one or the other. But somebody showed me a picture. They met David Lloyd at a convention, and he had this fantastic picture of V with a blue crayon. It was amazing,
I've seen the black and whites in Warrior because a friend of mine up north has a full collection of all the issues of Warrior magazine. He said it was actually pretty easy to get them. It was like 20 years ago, but it was pretty easy to get them. You could even buy them directly from Des Skin. He had them.
Yeah, Warrior's got to be up in the well over 700 issues now.
I might be able to show it if I can find it real quick. I don't want to dig through this box, but I just put all my magazines in a magazine box. You figure after 30 years, I would have figured out just to get a magazine box,
This is my French V for Vendetta. At least one part of it. It's in color, but it's a big, oversized hardcover. I found this lying around Marvel in the 90s. I've had it ever since. But I was like, you know what? That's kind of cool. I think I'll keep that. I guess somebody sent them. What was that?
Who's the publisher?
Let's see. Zenda Editions.
Those are some indie guys. I've never heard of them.
Yeah. It's,
who had the DC rights back then?
Don't know.
1989 Zenda Editions.
89.
Tome 1. So this is volume 1.
Yeah, sure. The series hadn't finished. The series finished in 1990 at DC.
It says copyright DC Comics 1988. Yeah, this is just part 1 though, so this probably part was already finished. Zenda Editions is 89, copyright 88 DC. Printed in Belgique.
Belgium.
All right. Don't they know how to spell Belgium right? They don't.
I'll probably find my Warrior magazines when we're done, but I found my Captain Britain from 1985.
Ooh.
In these British comics, if you will.
Right.
But nice, oversized. I can look through the art sometime whenever I want.
I like it.
Actually, I'd actually like to get the French version of Electro Saga because I'm not sure if it's oversized, but I think it is. So because being 4 prestige format books. They have the page right number to make it in European size, but I'm not sure if it's in European size because they were published by Delcourt, I think, so they should be in European size. And I'd like and Frank Miller Electra, that should be pretty interesting.
Somewhere around here, I also have the German version of Captain America's Mad Bomb. That I once again picked up around Marvel in the 90s. It was like, it's in hardcover. It's all in German. It's the Mad Bomb story. It was like before it was ever even collected in the U.S.
Knights of Old has a nice X-Men Wildcats, apparently. I guess what we're talking about here.
Yeah. X-Men Wild, that's the Travis Charis stuff.
David, and I've seen his stuff outside of comics. It blew my mind to find out that for 20 years that I found his stuff outside of comics. He's won science fiction awards. It has, stuff.
Wow.
David Lloyd did some wonderful illustrations of Night Raven back in the 80s. British mags. Night Raven was a cool pulpy hero comic from across the pond. I wonder why he never found an audience here.
Well, they didn't do comic book stories. Night Raven came out as illustrated prose, even within the Marvel UK comics. So I guess it would be pretty hard to justify doing a Night Raven. But they're available. There are Marvel UK graphic novels the same style as the Marvel graphic novels with the collected Night Raven stories. There are 2, I believe.
Yeah, in the 90s especially, there used to be, say Jared taking stuff, there used to be places at Marvel where you'd put the stuff you didn't want.
Here's what's going to happen, Jared. If we did this down here, here's what's going to happen. Like, we would do something, right? And then we would show it, and then I would sit here and tell everybody why my stuff sucks. You know, it would be exactly like me talking about modern comics. I would be doing the same thing to my part of that. Just saying.
Right. Before Ike Perlmutter was awarded Marvel Comics by a judge, there used to be stuff all over the place, and if you didn't want stuff, you'd put it over in these certain boxes or somewhere. You'd put them out where people could take them, and that's where a lot of this odd stuff came from. Like, you know, because some random editor gets the German version of Mad Bomb, and they really don't want it, so they put it out in the glom pile, and if someone wants it, they could take it. So that's where a lot of this stuff, like the strange versions of things that I got. What I wish I took home more of is the before the digital age. Let me see if I can pull some out here. Do I have them? Before the digital age of Marvel Comics. I think this is them. Let me see. Matter of fact, this is a box of stat paper from. This is something that doesn't exist anymore. Stats used to be like giant photocopies, only done photographically.
That's why they called it Staten
It's all my practice inking from when I was learning to ink. But we used to get our exact job. Oh, that's not in this bin. But our exact job was the letterers they wanted to send the comic to the letterer and the inker at the same time. So they'd take a photocopy of the pencils, send that to the letterer. The letterer would put a piece of vellum tracing paper over it, and then ink that vellum, and then we'd paste that vellum down. But with every sheet of stuff we pasted up came a photocopy of the pencils. And I have not here right now. I have about 50 pages of photocopies of pencils. I wish I had saved them all now. But who knew? Back then it was like I would have been overwhelmed with paper if I took because we just threw them away. They were just photocopies of pencils. But now I'm like, I wish I had all that stuff, so I could look at it now. Like everything with photocopies of Jim Lee's pencils. I have a couple of sheets of. Let me see if I can find them. Marvel.
What we got here? Milton Caniff has a Lady Burma and Terry story where a German engineer puts them through an ordeal similar to Evie's by V in order to make them realize what's it like to live under a totalitarian regime. It's very brutal, he says.
There we go. So, like, there's the photocopy placements of some Jim Lee Punisher.
Let me get that up here.
So those, we had to paste the balloons down where those little balloons are, those numbers. And let's see, there's
Frank Castle, that damn liberal.
Libertarian.
Doesn't pay taxes. Oh, yeah, I know what he's talking about here. Apparently, the comic card stuff left over from the 90s is taken off, supposedly, and everybody wants that rookie card.
This is Mark Silvestri, I think it is, in Spider-Man 2099.
Mark Silvestri was on 2099? I didn't know that.
Was it Silvestri? No, who was on 2099?
Rick Leonardi.
Rick Leonardi, that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah. Rick Leonardi on Spider-Man 2099. So it's
he'll always be the cloak and dagger dude in my heart.
So, this stuff went across our desks every day. And now I wish I'd saved more papers than just this, small pile.
Man. I'm just imagining having that job for a day and seeing all this stuff coming out that people are seeing, like that you're seeing 3 or 4 months before anybody else,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know. Actually know what Sleepy's talking about here. The comic I now want to get a hold of is the Marvel UK Planet of the Apes using the redrawn Killraven story.
What?
Yeah, I only found out about it in a wiki of British comics. In order to fill up the Planet of the Apes UK magazine, which was a weekly, they took War of the Worlds, starring Killraven, redrew the Martians as apes, and called it Ape Slayer.
Yeah, I mean, there was a time here on YouTube, like in the early 2010s, we had quite a bit of German, British, who knows from where, YouTubers, and they would show the annuals and stuff, the annual reprints, whatever they had in British. And then one of them talked about that and showed it, and I was like, it blew my mind. I had kept rewinding, saying, "Say that again, say that again." So that's the only reason I know. Somebody made a random YouTube video where in the middle of it
yeah, the ones that were modified there, was that the Craig Russell Killraven stuff?
Everything, I guess. Starting with the Neil Adams stuff.
Okay. Just the idea of having
priceless, sir, priceless.
Redraw pre-Craig Russell's enough to make me want to shoot them in the face with a bazooka.
Well, what did they care? I mean, it was Marvel in the 70s. Everything was just being made for that month. I mean, if we have some Killraven stories lying around, let's redraw them with monkeys. Okay.
There's a British news clip on YouTube about comics from 1989. They mentioned 2000 AD sold over 100,000 copies per week.
Yeah.
Wow.
And until I watched the documentary on 2000 AD, like on Amazon Prime or something, I honestly never picked up how political that book was,
And here's something interesting. This is
Ghost Critic was the one talking about
Spider-Man Annual 14. I believe these are Sal Buscema pencils. I think this is the stuff Bill Sienkiewicz was inking over. And you can see that he was really only doing breakdowns. Here's another page. I think these are the ones that he wasn't even doing a lot. This is why, if you ever see these pages, Sal Buscema and Bill Sienkiewicz did. Bill Sienkiewicz really went to town on them.
Sleepy Reader's got a little bit of a delay, guys. He's just now heard Scott's joke about Staten Island. Scott, you got to start making videos, man. You got it. You got it. I think apparently Ghost Critic.
Yeah, you don't have videos just puns, Tim. That would not be good.
Yeah, it'll work. It'll work. I think Ghost Critic was the guy that had the video about it. I don't know if Gretzky's just remembering the English YouTuber. He's still on my Facebook and stuff.
Yeah, he still shows up on Twitter every now and then.
You're not allowed to answer this question, Tim.
I am too.
No, you're not.
Hey, babe, somebody just asked, who do I go for? Kong or Godzilla? Oh, she's the loser. That's who I go for. That's what she said. It's Kong all the way. I'm doing it.
And another thing I read this week. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, guys.
Is The Fall by Brubaker and Lutz. Originally ran in Dark Horse Presents. Only about 42 pages. This version comes from 2001, I think it was. Who is this? Is this Drawn and Quarterly again? Once again, Drawn and Quarterly put out this version after Dark Horse Presents ran it. I think it came out in 98 in Dark Horse Presents. Straightforward crime story. I really liked it. I mean, I read it back in DHP. I read it again in 2001. And then I think I read it again, 10 years ago, maybe. Who even knows now? But I decided to pull it off my shelf and give it I enjoy this every time I read it. I'm probably going to read it more often now. Because it's short.
It's a pairing that people aren't expecting, Brubaker and Lutz.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we don't really notice that when some guys get promoted from the alternative scene.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even indie. The Brubaker was in the alternative scene.
Yeah. Brubaker was he was one of those autobiographical cartoonists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like when Bendis got promoted to do Daredevil and the Ultimate Spider-Man, Bendis, the guy from Caliber Comics. Okay,
yeah. How did that happen?
Nice. All right, I got one here for the back issue bins out there. If you like your grindhouse drive-in 70s gratuitous violence sort of thing, in fact, from comic, this is for you. This is Rob Zombie and Steve Niles teaming up to do The Nail. And The Nail is actually a wrestler in the 70s, right? Who ends up going against a monster of Bigfoot. He is a killer, right? This is not your Harry and the Hendersons Bigfoot. This is a feral, savage creature. And this guy, like you can see on the cover, they treat wrestling like it's not scripted, if you will. And the guy will sit there and put nails in between his fingers like a Wolverine, if you will. And we'll just sit there and pop people and pummel them in the ring. It starts out with a guy and a girl out on, they let you know it's 1976 in North Dakota. Carry On My Wayward Son is playing on the radio. And then there's a dude trying to make out and smoke some pot with a girl in the back seat. And she's just kind of giving it to him, but she's got like the 70s afro perm and her shirt's off and all this stuff. I mean, this is a grindhouse movie that it's kind of, it's that horror film from the 70s where when you're done, you got to go take a shower because you feel all slimy, but it was a mini series. And I found this, I've actually found, I think, a trade of it for $1, and I had to repair the trade. And for some reason, the trade being damaged kind of went with the book. I'm like, it felt right. So yeah, The Nail. I highly recommend it. I mean, it's Rob Zombie, so of course it's going to be in the 70s. But I feel like this could be in the same world as The Devil's Rejects, even though they don't show up. So
here's a little bit of a music observation for you, since you mentioned "Carry On My Wayward Son," which I didn't notice till 20 years after I heard that song. Do you know what the name of that song is?
Wait a minute. I always called it Carry On My Wayward Son. I just called it that.
The actual name of the song is Carry On Wayward Son. There's no my in it. Despite the fact that they sing all through the song, Carry On My Wayward Son, the actual title has no my in it. Why? And I didn't notice it wasn't until I was watching a TV show, Austin Stories, in 97. And they were doing this one little bit where they were having this girl, they're having this one character introduce the song that a couple of DJs were saying. They're like, oh, can you give us a quick introduction of a song? Can you say, we want to hear Carry On Wayward Son? She's like, okay, when we hear Carry On Wayward Son. And all of a sudden you hear Carry On My Wayward. And I looked it up, and sure enough, there's no my in the title. I'm like, well, what the hell is that all about?
I've got another one for you. It started out in the 80s, and this carried on all the way through school in the 90s and stuff like that. But there was a song where all anybody could remember is that it went Nobody knew what the song was called.
Oh, the Greg Kim?
No, it was called the Breakup Song, but they never say breakup in the song. Yeah, that's what it was called. It was called the Breakup Song.
Yeah, it's not a Greg Kim band.
Yeah, you would be saying
just for good, just an hour before. That's the Greg Kim.
Yeah, Pete, we'd be riding around in high school, and it might come on the radio at 10, 11 o'clock at night or something. Everybody would be talking about it, and everybody would be like, what's that called? And they'd get obsessed for a few days. This went on for years. We find out it's called the Breakup Song. One bar band showed up in 94 at a bar around here, and we asked them what was that song called. We had to go through their set list with them, and they said the Breakup Song. We're like, that's not it. It goes like this, and they'd go, it's the Breakup Song. Like, no, it doesn't.
We had broken up for good just an hour, but they don't write them like that anymore. Is the chorus too?
I remember the Fatboy Slim song that changed title between the original album when it was first put out and the best of, because it was officially the song is called Yamama, but since the only thing that you hear is the vocal sample of push the tempo. Everybody calls it push the tempo. So they start.
And talk about misheard lyrics. I was just looking at the lyrics to the Twilight Zone song from Golden Earring.
Yeah.
It's not what I thought it was.
Lots of songs are not what you thought were when you start looking at the lyrics. I was
Well, that was especially the
Rapture the other day, and they were not what I remembered.
I don't remember. I've been singing this lyric for 30 years. No, it has nothing to do with memory. I still listen to songs on one of my playlists. I listen to it all the time. It's which part was it? It's you were gone, you know, when the bullet hit the bone.
When the bullet hits the bone.
Yeah, it's not. I always thought it was you were gone, you know, when the bullet hits the bone. But it's not. It's something else. It's not you were gone, you know. It's God, I can't even remember now. I don't know if I find it, but it was just like I'm like, how is that not you were gone, you know, when the bullet hits the bone? It even makes more sense than the actual lyric.
Oh, Tim.
That phenomenon is called mondegreen.
Tim's doing the air bass thing like Joe Cocker.
Mondegreen?
Yeah, the act of misremembering a song. It's called mondegreen. It actually has a name.
But I'm not misremembering it. That is how I have been singing it for 30 years.
Right.
I've got you beat. I told my wife she loves that song, and I had to do it for her. And she's like, "What did you say? Like, just because I was singing in the car don't mean I like it." I thought it was her favorite. Anyway, going on.
So here's some obscure music trivia since we're talking about the Greg Kihn band earlier. What well-known guitarist actually played in the Greg Kihn band that you probably don't expect?
How much you want to bet? I don't even know who this well-known guitarist is, because a well-known guitarist to Scott isn't necessarily a well-known guitarist to me.
There was an FBI file on Louis Louis because they couldn't understand the words. That's a true story.
We didn't hear who the well-known guitarist was.
The FBI had files on everything, man.
Lucy in the Skies.
Joe Satriani.
Okay, I have heard of Joe Satriani.
You will come to know you.
I feel satisfied now that I actually heard of the well-known guitarist.
There you go.
Now that sounds interesting. This reminds me of a Gen 13 issue by Adam Warren where he had an earworm song that was used as a terroristic device. It was brilliant. I can see that driving you crazy.
Yeah, it's Achy Breaky Heart, probably.
Yeah.
Piss on the. Is that a real? I thought I knew my Jay Giles, man, but is that?
Yeah,
really,
I don't know that one.
Wow, man.
Even it carries a song in lyrics. What are they? Well, which Tim Truman ones had the flexi disc in them?
The Prowler. One's the Prowler, and one's an issue of Scout, and I had them both.
Okay.
Yes.
So they came with music.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Tim Truman, and speaking of Tim Truman, I was about to bring up some Hex stuff he did. Tim Truman at Eclipse Comics did the Prowler, which was like this very violent version of like Green Hornet meets the Shadow, you know? And he aged in real time. So on the flexi disc, you got his Green Hornet like serial song, you know what I mean? Like theme song. And then in the 80s, I think it's like a bar band song, you know? He's like a old man then like in his 60s. But in Scout, I can't remember what he did, but I met Tim Truman at Heroes Con and talked to him about it. And he was like talking about the guy who was in a band with him when they performed that in the 80s and made it. And he was just like cracking up that somebody had one and found it. And he can't wait to tell his buddy that he found one. And I'm like, I was dying to ask him, how do you make music with these and put them in these comics and you don't have one? I couldn't figure that out, you know.
Yeah, issue 2 or 3 of Nexus had a flexi disc too. I know it had sound effects in it. Did it have music and themes? I don't remember.
Don't know. Don't have that.
What was the story? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The Brandon Graham book I just bought didn't have musical notes, but it had like colors and stuff to represent music. So it actually visually represented music. I remember, what's the name of that book that I just bought like 2 weeks ago that I really liked? Oh, darn it. Oh, well.
Scott, what was the story with Surfing with the Alien? Because he used John Byrne art, but wasn't there something that came about from that?
There's a long story behind that. Okay. So he was trying to figure out how to market the album. He did a radio interview with the DJ. And the DJ brought up to him and said, well, you know, they were going through the song listings on there, and he had a different I think the original was Lords of Karma, which is another, song on that album. And that was the original concept for the title. And the DJ said, you really should have called it Surfing with the Alien. And Joe started thinking, and he started talking to some people. And evidently one of the guys that worked in Sanctuary Records back then also knew some people at Marvel. And told him the story about, the Silver Surfer and everything. Said, so what they actually did, they went to Marvel. They just went downtown, it's like going from one office to another, 5 blocks or whatever it was. Got the rights to the Silver Surfer artwork for it was either somewhere between $1,000 to $5,000 for a 20-year lease on that artwork. Conversely, that lease has run out now, and what Marvel's asking for now is nowhere near that price. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And the artwork is no longer being used on new printings of that album.
So my whole thing was I wanted to yell, it's a collectible now, which would that be?
Yeah, it could be.
And then I'll answer this question in a minute because this one just cracks me up. If anybody remembers the band I'm about to mention, it'll be funny. Did you find something there, Jared? I don't want to talk over you, man.
I just wanted to show there's the music in Rain Like Hammers. He was using these colors to indicate music.
Right? That's cool. That's very cool.
So that was kind of cool.
Definitely not doing black metal.
All right. So this is one of those questions that if we got to talking or we got to thinking, some things might dawn on us and stuff. Because I know there's more. You had Robert Crumb, who did 2 album covers, one in the 60s for Janis Joplin and the Big Brother or whatever. But the one I want to talk about is Neil Adams. Neil Adams did a cover for a band called Trickster. And if you want to look up Trickster, Give It To Me Good is a word. There comes a time that you grow to be a man, you're about to turn 18 or 19, and you realize the decade you're growing up in needs to die. And it was with the debut of Trickster. Okay. And it had a Neil Adams cover from his Continuity Studios. Yeah. But I'll never forget buying that album because I went, that's Neil Adams. And I bought this thing when I'm 17. I get home, I take it back. But they were like, is there anything wrong with it? I'm like, it sucks. We can't give you money back because it sucks. And I went, I'm not leaving. I'm like, and I got my money. I did get my money back, but I got a Metallica cassette. But yeah, Trickster with Neil Adams. There
are tons of comics artists that have done album covers and videos. There are a bunch of them.
Yeah. What we got here? The currently most notable Portuguese writer is a pianist. His latest graphic novel, Ballad of Sophie, has music in it and will be published by Top Shelf. I remembered some things like V for Vendetta and some other books where you would actually have music. It would look like, it was a sheet of music with the lyrics. And I know Terry Moore in his stuff with Strangers in Paradise, he had a bunch of poems, but I think there was 1 or 2 songs in there somewhere. Oh man, how could I forget this one?
Well, yeah. Now, having said that, who did Meatloaf's second album cover?
Did he do a second one? Is that what you said?
No. Well, who did the next album cover for Meatloaf that was not done?
Bat Out of Hell, Return to Hell, or whatever what it was.
That was the next one that was done after that wasn't by Richard Corbin.
Yeah, it was like the 90s, I think. Who was? I don't know.
Bernie Wrightson.
Well played.
I used to have an album of Around the World in 80 Days with a Wally Wood cover.
Yeah.
The only reason I had it was that it had a Wally Wood cover.
Right. Now, who else? What other comics artist did a Danzig album besides Simon Bisley?
Well, he ripped off a Mike Golden skull off of
No. Does that count? That's the logo. That's not the album cover.
Yeah.
But what other comics artist besides Simon Bisley actually did more than one album cover for Glenn Danzig? Mike Kaluta.
Kaluta. Of course. I should have guessed Kaluta just because you were talking about it. You know what I'm saying?
Charles Best, Mike Kaluta, Bernie Wrightson. Those are his go-to guys.
Well, if Jeff Jones was work was ever used for an album cover or not, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Now, this Pearl Jam video he's talked about here with McFarlane art, it's animated McFarlane art, Greg Pulo McFarlane art. I think it's called Do the Evolution by Pearl Jam. and it's straight out Greg Capullo, McFarlane cartoon all the way through it. Simon Bisley and Danzig had a couple of comics they did. I don't know if Simon Bisley did album covers for him.
Dave McKean has done several album covers for all different groups. Dream Theater, several others. You know.
I want this just because of the name of the band. Cerebus was illegally used for a German punk band called the Sperm Birds. Dave Sim later let them license it for pretty much free. The Sperm Birds. I love that.
Wow.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do the revolution, not do the evolution. In my head, I was saying revolution. I heard. I swear. You know?
I'm thinking do the locomotion now.
Yeah. I read that David Anthony Kraft would use rock song titles as story titles and in the Marvel stories. I've seen Steve Englehart do that. I've seen tons of comic book writers do that. They actually, the one that cracked me up is Steve Englehart. At Ultra Comics, he had I think it was like issue 2 or something of the Strangers. There was a character named Huey. So the next, the cliffhanger for the next issue, the title of the story was "Hey Hugh, get off of my cloud."
Well, Kraft worked as a music journalist before he moved to Marvel, so I guess it would be natural for him.
We all know where Rocket Raccoon came from.
Yes, Dave McKean did do Alice Cooper cover. Sure did.
Yeah, Mike. That's about a musician, and of course,
unsurprisingly, James Kachalka does his own album art covers.
Homesick Pilots has a lot to do with music, of course.
And when it comes to like rock and roll and comics and stuff, I swear if I get going, I'm going to be I'll be thinking of more. There's people who actually did stories based on songs they heard, got inspired.
Phonogram had a lot to McKelvey and Kieran Gillen. That was all about music. That series.
Probably nobody in the comics industry has done more bootleg covers than William Stout has.
William Stout.
A bunch, and they're good. Yeah.
I tell you what, that picture of you and me with Stout down there at Comic, that's one of my favorite pictures. That was such a good time where he led us behind the table. And go ahead. Yeah.
Bill did bootleg covers for The Who, The Rolling Stones, Iggy Pop, Todd Rundgren. Oh, gosh, a bunch of other ones. Yeah.
There was some epic there was some comic I think from the Epic line of it was supposed to be a band and it was really bad. Like this stuff's we got the wheels turning, we're greasing the gears. I want to start think of random really bad books.
Well, to bring back an old subject, do you remember a couple of weeks ago I mentioned something about I thought it would be cool if they do facsimile editions of all the early Marvel stuff in real time?
Yeah.
Well, they're not doing that, but they're putting out a Marvel 1961 omnibus.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I think it's even August 1961, where they're in an omnibus. They're putting out all the issues that came out the month Fantastic Four #1 came out.
Okay, so what we're talking about here is the 60th anniversary of Marvel Comics is this year, right?
Right.
So to celebrate it, they're going to put out a $125 omnibus. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's at least one thing they're doing. Who knows if they're doing anything else? But yeah, they're putting out an omnibus of everything that came out that 1 month.
So it should have 300 pages.
Yeah. My people here. Let me acknowledge this. My people here. That's the book.
That's the name of it.
My people. I love. Yeah, that's why I do this. Anyway, I'll shut up now.
I have a pet. It's a pet peeve of mine that Fantastic Four #1 does not mark the beginning of modern Marvel. For several reasons. The first one is that the company is not called Marvel. At the time, Martin Goodman is still using shell companies. Fantastic Four #1 is put out by 20th Century Comic Corporation, if I'm not mistaken. It was either that or Nonpareil Publishing, one of those. And it doesn't become Marvel until 1973, which is when the Goodmans are finally ejected. Because for the Goodman sells out in 68, the sales complete in 69. All the shell companies are consolidated in magazine management. which is the new name of the company, and it only becomes Marvel Comics Group in 1973. Now, as for the Marvel brand, the Fantastic Four #1 has that little MC logo that's hardly visible, but it's not the first time that it's used. It had already been used for the prior 4 months. It actually starts with Patsy Walker number 95 and Journey into Mystery number 69. And
didn't they use the MCP even in the 50s?
In 1947 or 48, they actually used the Marvel logo in the non-romance titles. The romance titles were called Lovers Magazine. But they used the MC, but it was in use 4 months before Fantastic Four #1. The actual use of Marvel as a trademark only begins with Amazing Spider-Man #2. And all the magazines in that the week following already have the Marvel branding. There's no mention of Marvel anywhere in any comic of the period until that Amazing Spider-Man #2. And you can even use the chronology, because people equate the use of chronology with the shared universe as the beginning of Marvel. There's no chronology until Fantastic Four #12 and Amazing Spider-Man #1, which come out the same week, and both have encounters between different characters. The Hulk guest stars in Fantastic Four, where it's finally the battle between the Hulk and the Thing. And in Amazing Spider-Man #1, the backup story, which introduces the Chameleon, has Spider-Man going up to the Baxter Building to ask the Fantastic Four for a job. And that's when the universe starts. But that's also not the beginning of Marvel. The beginning of Marvel is Strange Worlds #1, which is the first comic after the Atlas implosion to feature new Jack Kirby art. That's when it starts. All of the monster stories are Marvel stories. All the Western stories that Kirby does at the time are also Marvel stories. They have the same style of storytelling that has more in common with Fantastic Four #1 than Fantastic Four #1 as with anything after that. Because the two stories in Fantastic Four #1 are monster stories. So is Fantastic Four #2 with the Skrull invasion. And everything like that connects to the monster stories, not to the superheroes.
Yeah, and to add to that, what you're saying, the whole thing was that the Thing, they made it a monster because they were still hooked on the 50s monsters craze. Yeah. That was their way out. If it failed, or if a publisher said something, they're like, it's not superheroes. See, we got a monster. And that was the Thing. The Thing was their safety net character. Yeah. Go ahead.
Because there was an issue. Martin Goodman did not want to upset Jack Leibowitz too much, because he was their distributor.
Right.
And DC, people think that the Flash begins and all of a sudden it's a superhero explosion. It's not. It takes years. It takes several years until the Flash actually comes back with the Flash style. So when Goodman supposedly reacts to Justice League having good sales, they're kind of cautious about it, because they want to make sure they keep having the distribution. So the first 2 issues, no mention of superheroics whatsoever. The costumes only debut in issue #3. Which at the time Fantastic Four #1 starts as bi-monthly, so it took 5 months until they got it. But also, Stan Lee remembered that the last time they had tried superheroes, it didn't really work. So he wasn't very keen on the idea, let's do superheroes. So what he was using was Jack Kirby's science fiction ideas.
Have you read Tom Brevoort's blog?
Sometimes I go there, not much.
It's not usually very good. But he's I'm sorry, it's just not that interesting a writer most of the time. But the stuff he's written about trying to figure out Fantastic Four #1 is pretty interesting. Because they've gone into, because they're not sure. All the sort of historians of comics think maybe Fantastic Four #1 was 2 stories pieced together from somewhere else. And they've been trying to put the puzzle together for years now. And Tom Brevoort's got some good blogs on that particular part, where they're trying to figure out where did this come from? A monster book originally, and they've tied it together, and this and that, and all sorts of stuff. But
to be honest, I never.
I was going to say an Atlas monster book and Challenger of the Unknown. That's all I'm going to say.
No, but to be honest, I never checked to see which is the job number on the two Fantastic Four #1 stories, because that's usually.
They go through all that. Don't you worry.
Okay.
People check.
Okay, yeah, but that should tell you when the story went into production.
There might not be a job number on it because pages were. First of all, the original pages I think are gone of that one.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what it is, but like I said, they go through all the clues possible to try and figure out exactly how Fantastic Four #1 got pieced together, and other comics from that era too.
Because the first story has 13 pages, which was the length of a normal monster story, and the second story has 12 pages, but it doesn't have a splash page. And at the time, splash pages were not part of the story; they were an introduction. So it would have a splash page if it had gone to a monster story. So it's possible that the Goodman thought, "Am I doing Fantastic Four? Am I not doing Fantastic Four?"
See, I don't even think Goodman put that much thought into it. I think he
might not be. Well, he didn't. One thing that he didn't have was an adventure type. An adventure type book with a main feature. The Westerns had main features.
I don't think that was him. I don't know who made those decisions from every. See, the strange thing about reading about all those early days is you always hear about how sad, how sad like Stan was when Stan was like the last one left at Marvel in like the 50s, in the late 50s. How everybody else at magazine management was always like, geez, they felt sorry for him because he was a one-man department. That always led me to believe that Goodman didn't really, I don't think Goodman ever decided what books they were going to publish. I don't think because he had so much other stuff to do. And Marvel was so small. I can't imagine. I imagine that Stan Lee would have to come up with an idea for something and convince him of it, and it probably didn't take a lot of convincing. Which is why from all I've read, because I know that one story about Stan Lee about Goodman playing golf with the DC publisher is not true.
Nobody believes that anymore.
I mean, I heard that story for so long from so many people.
And it's just not true.
I can't believe it made
Which leads me to believe, I don't know if Goodman paid much attention to Marvel at that time at all. Besides,
Goodman would have to react to trends. That's why the war comics get canceled by 1960, and they ramp up the production of the humor teenage books. They launch Kathy. They launch Linda Carter, Student Nurse.
I can imagine him looking at the books every 2 or 3 months and going, get rid of that one, get rid of that one, get rid of that one. I mean, that I can imagine, but not much more than that.
But at least themes he would have to suggest. I don't think that if Stan Lee came up to him, I want to do a comic on this theme, that Goodman wouldn't go for it. He would ask why. Right. He would ask, okay, what's selling? This. Do a comic on this. Cowboys now? Do more cowboys. Teenage humor? Do more teenage humor. Fantastic Four doesn't really make sense considering what they were doing.
It's like
precisely because it didn't have.
The question I also have about those days is, where would Goodman get other companies' sales figures?
Word of mouth. There was people.
I don't know.
I'm thinking word of mouth. I mean,
I don't know.
The thing with Fantastic Four #1 that I always had a feeling about is that it was like they put their toe in the water trying something different. Now, what they were trying to accomplish, only they know, but it definitely was them playing around with the idea of superheroes in the real world. They did, it broke the rules. There was no, and Stan Lee says he was doing it his way, and his wife encouraged him because he wanted to quit anyway. But when you read that book, it's almost like they were trying something different, but they were holding back, which is why I don't think the costumes and stuff popped up for another few issues.
To answer your question, Jared, you probably got the sales figures from Publishers Weekly.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there was a is there a publication with sales figures for every comic book in the 50s?
Publishers Weekly's been going on since the late 1800s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, guys, in a few minutes, I got to wrap it up here, and I don't want to end it like right here on this topic, man. So, I mean, this was getting juicy.
This is one thing that I like to do. We like our stories to go from point A to point B to the ending. Then we tend to believe these urban legends about how the comics are made, and then we find out they're not truth, but they remain. There are a lot of people who are convinced of a lot of things. I still hear people saying that Stan Lee inherited the company from Martin Goodman, that he was his nephew. Well, it must have been so.
Well, weren't they doing like anthology books around that time where you got 2-3 stories per book anyway?
All the monster books were anthologies, and that's why we have the 13 plus 13.
Yeah. Well, what I'm getting at is maybe it feels that way because maybe they were structuring it for that to begin with, and somebody said just put them together and we'll give it its own issue. You know.
Yeah, because there's one funny thing. Goodman in 1961. Goodman still had 16 ongoing series, but he was not putting out all bi-monthlies. There were monthly books, and he was putting out about 11 a month.
Yeah.
But with Fantastic Four #1, it still falls within the limit of the rest of the year. But now he has a 17th ongoing title, and I don't know how he managed to squeeze that in without nobody notice.
He just hoped nobody would notice.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I've heard people say. Probably just trying to get one over on him.
You're probably good, but if it still fell within the 11 a month prescribed limit for that year, it didn't last long. They said 8 a month. That was in 1957. Even by 1958, it was already 10.
Well, you know what? I remember some of these older guys and stuff from around there when I was a kid and stuff, and somebody knows, and nobody's going to be a snitch. You know, the fact that somebody's like, I will not be a snitch. I'm not going to be the stool pigeon here. Somebody knows what happens. I
don't know whose job it would be to be in charge of how many books Marvel published that's distributed through DC's parent company. I mean, I can imagine it was easy to sneak a book or two past them because that's not a high-level job. That's going to be a job of some grunt on the ground who's not going to pay attention that much, who's not going to go, oh, yeah, I caught you, Martin Goodman. You published a 17th book this month. No way.
Yeah.
So
but they did have a limit of titles. So as long as it says, okay, this is title #1, title #2, title #3, they don't care how many exactly they were publishing. But Fantastic Four #1 does manage to be a 17th title squeezed in. So maybe the idea that at first they were doing it for the monster comic, and then they said, let's just put them together. That's also a viable idea.
Think about how Spider-Man.
Most comic stories were not full-length comic stories in those days either. That's why they always had full-length story on the cover. So
that's what I was getting ready to say. Amazing Spider-Man, Amazing Fantasy #15. Spider-Man was a half story. Even
if you pick up an issue of Superman in 1957, weren't those like 2 stories per issue or something?
Yeah, 3 actually. I think there were 3. Detective Comics even still had non-Batman stories. It was the Martian Manhunter and Roy Raymond, TV Detective. Marvel also the plan was not to cancel Amazing Fantasy #15 because the Amazing Spider-Man #1 and 2 have 2 stories, and the second story has a later project number, and the first 2 have a number that takes it back all the way back to the previous year. So they were probably made for Amazing Fantasy, got canceled when they were in production, and okay, let's just use them later.
Yeah, trying to figure out what was going on with Fantastic #1. I mean, I think you really have to put yourself in the era of what was going on, and that's what I'm trying to get at here. Like a lot of things were structured for half stories or a third of a story in those comics and stuff back then,
Well, check out Tom Brevoort's blog on Fantastic Four #1. He's got some interesting stuff in there. He kind of collates all the stuff that's going around.
So when Sleepy Reader started reading Marvel, he was exactly 10 years old. I can't believe it's been around for 60 years. No wonder it's mostly unreadable now. I'm going to call back to like the speech Nighthawk gave Hyperion at the end of the Squadron Supreme. Like, you can set up all this power, but can you trust the people that come in afterwards not to abuse it? And the answer at Marvel is no. But anyway.
Well, we've had this discussion before where I've said that it's impossible. The center cannot hold. You cannot have a bunch of people create stuff 60 years ago and then 60 years later have a third or fourth group of people somehow be true to the vision of it just life doesn't work like that.
But now we go back to the beginning, 60 years, and it's a more interesting story about what was going on with Fantastic #1 than anything they're doing now. But anyway, what were you about to say, Scott?
I was going to say there's one exception to that, and it's very obscure, and it's not even the United States. In Germany, okay, I can't even think of the damn title of it now. Perry Roden has been being published for, I don't know, God, it's the longest serialized publication on Earth.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you can't.
Yeah, when I'm at the airport, I see Perry Rodens.
Right.
Yeah.
But what I'm getting
I'm not saying something can last a long time. I'm saying it's going to be different 60 years later.
Yeah, it's going to be different, but it's not. It's nowhere near as different as Marvel was within 20 years after the 60s.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, in terms of consistency, it's fairly consistent.
Right.
I think I'm just going to read some Far Side, Calvin Hobbes, and some Opus, the Penguin. You know,
I don't think of everything you just mentioned. I like Burke Breathitt's far. Oh my God, I'm drawing a blank.
Bloom County.
Bloom County. I don't think it holds up as well as the other titles do, though.
Nah, I
kind of a little more part of its time.
Well, I kind of think things come back around. Like in 20 years, it might be like, oh my God, what was going on in the 80s is going on now again. You know what I mean? I feel like it's got enough life to where it could come back around.
He still writes new stuff and posts it on Facebook, and it's all right. I kind of fell out of Bloom County in the late 80s.
Right.
I kind of dug what he's doing with Outland, and then I started noticing him bringing back the characters one at a time every Sunday. You know what I mean? Like,
has he brought back Steve Dallas?
Huh?
Has he brought back Steve Dallas?
I think Steve Dallas might have. Don't quote me on it. I mean, we're going back 30 years, but Steve Dallas came into Outland. Like, I think he was like one of the third character he brought back or something. I don't know.
I'm just curious.
He does new Bloom County strips.
Yeah,
he just
new ones
out this week.
Yeah, I posted him on Facebook. Like, he's been doing it for a while because I think I found him. He made one where he had all the characters do a tribute to Bowie when he died, and everybody showed up as the Thin White Duke, and they had Steve Dallas pop up as Ziggy Stardust, and he's yelling at him. He's got his orange hair and his pot belly and his spandex going, y'all said Ziggy Stardust years, and they're all like all slicked back and looking like the Thin White Duke. It's much funnier when you see it. It's embedded in my mind.
Just as a nature of the writing that was done, just think that Bloom County back in the day, not now, but I don't think it holds up as well as the Far Side or Calvin and Hobbes.
Bloom County is of its era, in my opinion. If you were at the 80s,
and that's not really a bad thing. It's
the
nature of the beast of what it is.
I mean, there's comic books that are of the 60s, of the era of the 60s. I remember reading them as a kid thinking, this is so 60s. It's not a bad thing. But, I revisit.
Says Marvel probably had more hands stirring the pot than Perry Rodan.
That's true.
Yep.
True.
Some of them don't even know how to cook.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, guys, I want to be the bad guy tonight. And I got to say that we got to wind it up. Got things to do and got to get up early and all that good stuff. And I'm tired.
Okay. We'll have to get to the notes in my book next week.
Awesome. And I also hope that Paolo will have his cork board up and some yarn and stuff because I want more of this 60s. I want more.
This connects here.
He knows the inside and out. I mean, I was so impressed. He's like 1961, but we go to 73 with Patsy Walker Hellcat. I mean, I loved it. I'm sitting here like, this is good. This is so good, you know.
And another sleepy reader comment from earlier, he said something like that omnibus is going to be a strange read. My immediate thought was, do you think anyone will actually sit down and read the entire 1961 omnibus?
Somebody will, but not everybody.
You know what superhero fans are? You know what superhero fans are? Nobody wants to read the Millie the Model and Patsy Walker.
Yeah.
And both had two ongoings at the time.
I'd probably rather read those now than anything Marvel's doing these days.
But you're never gonna.
Even the westerns aren't very good.
Never.
Hey man,
you're not dropping $100 on that omnibus.
Years, evidently.
Two Gun Kid is a classic. That's all I'm saying. But you know.
I think Two Gun Kid was on hiatus at the time because they canceled. There are two Gun Kids, and the one that we know now, it already started in 62 or 63, and it used superhero tropes. The previous one had been canceled in 1960.
As a kid, that's probably why I liked him, was the tropes, giving him the secret identity, the domino mask. I loved him, you know. But then later on, I was like, they made him a superhero. You didn't notice,
Interesting thing.
You can find a list of everything that's in the omnibus. You know, only the Fantastic Four is the only one anybody. You know,
there were a bunch of pseudo super villains in the westerns in 1962-63. Even a Red Raven.
I want to see the return of Dr. Droom. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. Somebody's going to buy that omnibus and be surprised what's in it and be like, damn it, I paid a lot of money for this. I'm reading it all. 6 weeks later, a last page, you know.
If they title the omnibus by year, which I don't think they're going to do, if they call it 1960, 1961, whatever, somebody's going to get to 1963 and say, this is not Alan Moore and Steve Bissette. What the hell's going on, man?
This is what
Yeah. If you try to read the whole monthly output of Marvel around that time, you're going to have to do it slowly.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, got booed him. I don't know what I got booed for. That was somebody. Okay, I took it. Oh, boo! I'm the bad guy. I get it. All right. So
we're signing off.
I'm this week's villain. So somebody will be the villain next week. We rotate. But everybody, thanks for popping in.
Have a good night.
Later, guys.
We'll catch you guys next time.
Goodbye.
Say goodbye, Scott.
Goodbye, Scott.